Welcome to the On Your Mind podcast, where we believe mental illness can be temporary and transformative. Stay tuned for innovative, effective tools from experts in the field of mental health. Hosted by Timothy J. Hayes, psychologist. This podcast aims to change the narrative around mental illness. Move from a place of fear to a place of hope and solutions. Here on Your Mind.
Now in the fifth decade of his career, Dr. David Gruder refers to himself as a recovering psychologist and professional troublemaker. Drawing on the dizzying range of leadership, training, consulting, and clinical roles he has filled over the years, these days this 12-time award-winning clinical and organizational developmental psychologist mainly focuses on equipping leaders and influencers who are called to help repair and elevate the world with the missing spiritual, inner, and outer skills needed to succeed in their calling. Dr. Gruder's main website is drgruder.com, drgruder.com, and his online course portal is gruderacademy.com. So, Dr. Gruder, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you, Dr. Hayes.
It's an honor. I've heard quite a bit about you from a mutual friend of ours, and I was hoping you could start us off by letting us know how you got into your current position and what drives your passion for this work.
Well, basically how I got into my current roles in my career as I look back with the advantage of 20/20 hindsight that is only available at the point in life that I'm in, which is I'm in the second half of my 60s now. And so as I look back, I really see how the entire fabric of my life has set me up to do the work that I do today. We can unpack whatever pieces of that you'd like, but it's just staggering to me to realize that as I was going through various experiences that I've had in my life, there was no way to know ahead of time what I was being groomed for. So I don't know where you want to go with that, but.
Well, I know that, I've had much a similar experience. And one of the things that we talked about that we share in common is exposure to energy medicine, energy work in psychology, the idea of whether you want to do it acupuncture, acupressure meridian systems, things of that nature. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in that.
Well, that was an interesting side of my career. In the mid-1970s, I became an administrator for what was at that time, it no longer exists, it's been replaced, but at that time it was the first and only professional association for the emerging holistic health field for practitioners and innovators. It was a professional association. Now we call it integrative medicine and health. And at that time, I was exposed to all kinds of amazing, innovative things where the geniuses and the bona fide innovators were side by side with the quacks. And we had to learn very quickly how to discern between the true innovators and the quacks in the field. And I was first trained in some of the origins of what led to energy psychology a couple of decades later. At that time, I was trained by John Thie in Touch for Health. I was trained in a number of different energy-oriented methods, including neuro-emotional technique, NET, by Scott Walker, who's a chiropractor, who happened to be my chiropractor at that point in time. And he was just in the process of beginning to develop NET. So it goes back a long way. And then if we fast forward to 1998, I allowed myself to be kind of arm twisted into co-founding and serving as the first president for the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, ACEP, which is kind of the umbrella professional organization for the field, the entire family of energy psychology methods, probably the most well-known of which these days is EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques.
And so in your career, were you doing one-on-one clinical work with people and incorporating these tools? Were you using them for yourself or both?
Well, absolutely. First and foremost, I always guinea pig myself on things before I ever think about whether I'm going to bring them to clients. That said, my career for up until 2000, for the first 20 years of my career, my schedule allowed me to include in everything else I was doing a clinical psychology practice. So I was providing psychotherapy, and I was most definitely using energy psychology methods with a large percentage of my clients, at least some of the time with them. But I've also used it extensively in training healthcare professionals and psychological professionals in these methods, and in using them in my work with executives and leaders and innovators and influencers, which is my current focus in my career, because the keynotes and training programs and business consulting that I was doing throughout my career, that part of my career became caused me to spend so much time on the road by the year 2000 that it was no longer viable for me to continue to have a psychotherapy practice, because I was saying to clients, oh, you're going to have to hold this crisis, and I'll be back in town for a couple of weeks, and then you're going to have to hold the next crisis too. And that didn't work well in psychotherapy.
Understood. And these days, how do you spend most of your time? How are you gracing your clients with the work you do as an organizational psychologist and as somebody who's known for working with integrity in your work?
Well, my primary focus these days is on working with leaders and influencers who are themselves called to do their part, whatever their part is, in repairing and elevating the world by equipping them with spiritual inner and outer skills that enable them to succeed with whatever their mission is.
So one of my favorite teachers says there is nothing more practical than true spirituality. So what are the spiritual skills you're talking about?
Right. Well, that starts with what I call paradigm sculpting, where people master their ability to be the architects of their self-view and their worldview, so that the worldview and the self-view that they are embodying rather than hoping to embody actually helps them feel the way that they, in their most highest self, want to feel and act in the world in the ways that they most want to act from their highest self. So it starts with of course, having a sense of purpose and having a sense of clarity and embodiment of whatever paradigm, whatever worldview and self-view that helps them embody their mission effectively. And then it goes from there into the kinds of humility and self-responsibility that are skills, in fact, that I have found that need to be developed for being able to get out of the way. Something I got very clear in myself, actually, at the age of 13 was the first experience I had with that. And I had it was just an amazing experience in which there was no me, that things that were coming through me were far more transcendent and far more transformative than my seemingly separated ego self could possibly have created. So it starts there.
It's okay. So that began with you at age 13.
That was when I had my first experience of really getting out of the way, first conscious experience of that. And I'll add that at that point in my life, I had no way to talk about it because it was outside of the worldview of my parents. So when I tried to figure out a way to speak of it, it just fell on deaf ears because I had no paradigm for talking about that experience.
So when you look at the people who are maybe 40, 50, or 60 years old before they even get introduced, hopefully by someone like you, about the need for that kind of paradigm shift or getting their egoic self out of the way, what kinds of tools do you use to help them experience that or move in that direction?
Right. Well, it's a combination of psychoeducation and specific skills. And then if I need to use tools, that as well. But the psychoeducation really starts with helping people become awake about the spell that they don't know or partly know, or maybe intuit that they have been under but haven't known how to get their hands on identifying the anatomy of that spell. And when I'm working with people to disengage from their loyalty to the spell and step into full resonance with the paradigm and that they most want to be living from, and the purpose that they feel most called to embody in this world, I most often use energy psychology methods to facilitate that when needed.
So is there a specific to each individual spell that you're talking about, or is there a general spell that you believe we're all operating under in at least in the Western culture? How do you approach that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is yes, in that I think we have a cultural spell that all of us are at least introduced to, if not indoctrinated into, but we're certainly swimming in that water. And then we have our own personal spells as well. We have whatever survival plan we needed to call upon our internal genius to develop as children in order to survive whatever it is that we needed to survive. And the spell there is that by the time we become adults, we've been practicing our survival plan skills for so long, and they've become so automatic and habitual and unconscious that we come into adulthood thinking that those skills are who we are rather than how we survived. So we have personal spells to break through as well.
And when you talk about the energy psychology, is there something specific that you use? Do you use the neuroemotional technique or the EFT tapping to help either identify and or break through those spells for the individual?
I actually use something that is called comprehensive energy psychology or comprehensive energy psychotherapy. And it is an integrative approach that incorporates what I found to be the common ingredients, implicit or explicit, that virtually every member of the energy psychology family of methods seems to use, including EFT, because when I was serving as ASEP's founding president, one of the things that was very precious to me, in addition to creating a durable, sustainable infrastructure for the organization's long-term thriving, was to represent the family of methods. And so any of the energy psychology methods that I wasn't trained in before I became ASEP's first president, I made a point of getting training in during my tenure as its president. And what I found were that there were basically 6 ingredients that all energy psychology methods take into account, whether explicitly or implicitly, and comprehensive energy psychology is a framework that harnesses those 6 ingredients as a foundational training that supercharges the practitioner's ability to use any of the methods in the energy psychology family of methods.
Do you, is there a way to quickly list what those 6 are?
Yes, actually there is, because they're based on what I view as 6 common sense questions that all psychotherapy clients, all self-developers, and all practitioners, all helping professionals really have. The first question is, how do I know when my client is ready to work on any particular issue? Like, there are times, just on a common sense level, where we're just too stressed, or we're too wigged out, or somebody cut us off on the highway when we were driving somewhere. We're too frazzled to focus on working on any particular issue of ours. So how do we know when we are, or our client is ready to start working on a specific issue in a given moment in time? The second question is, how do we tune in on, or how do we hone in on the most useful issue to work on today? What level of what issue to work on today? The third question is, how do we evaluate progress during the session? The final arbiter of progress or success is what happens out in a person's life. But while we're doing something in a session, we have to have a way of evaluating progress so we know what to do next and next and next as the session unfolds. The fourth question is, how do we secure full internal permission to succeed with treating whatever issue has been selected to work on? The fifth is, what is the most useful method to use in treating this layer of this issue in this moment with this person, and then doing a round of using whatever that treatment is, which leads to the sixth question, which is, what do we do next and next and next after each round of treatment, as the treatment unfolds, and how do we know when we're done? Those are 6 common sense questions that all good psychotherapy really should revolve around, but energy psychology methods have very specific interventions with each of those questions.
Excellent. Excellent. So when you're currently today, if someone, and I understand that you're not doing a lot of the one-on-one personal
I only
therapy.
train and mentor therapists these days. Yeah.
Right. But when you're looking to advise people who, either the therapist you're training or the people who might be in need of a therapist, what do you tell them to look for when they're trying to find a good match between their personal needs and a therapy or a therapist?
Oh, that's a marvelous and important question. A couple of things. First of all, I emphasize the difference between expertise and chemistry. And, expertise is important to evaluate. And there are plenty of people that are true experts in working with whatever issues that particular practitioner works with, but they don't necessarily have chemistry with everyone who comes to them. So I really do encourage consumers to trust their gut about the chemistry piece. They've got to feel a rapport with the person they're working with. That doesn't mean that the person's going to be their best friend or anything like that, but there has to feel like an energetic and emotional and empathic connection. The second thing that I teach people, which I consider to be just as important, is right matching at the level of what is most important, whatever is most important for that person to be working on at that particular point in time. Because not all therapy methods are right for all people. And even methods that are right for a particular person aren't necessarily the methods that are most useful for them at the particular stage in their journey they're in. So what I do is I help people understand essentially what I call the flow of life, which is that we all go through cycles or chapters throughout our lives where things are going fairly well in a particular part of our life, or a particular chapter in our life, and then we start getting these wake-up calls, these little knocks upside the head saying, there's an issue here to be dealing with. And There's an old saying, you might have heard it. I don't know who originally said it. I found it decades ago, and I've never been able to find the source. Mostly people change not because they see the light, but because they feel the heat. And so the intensity of the wake-up calls have to become high enough so that person really becomes committed to true healing. Because and this is something that I train consumers in, is the ability to recognize the difference between somebody wanting to have their symptoms controlled, wanting to basically develop a better mousetrap, develop a better survival plan, or raise their pain tolerances even higher, versus someone who's really looking to clear away the root cause baggage that's been causing their wake-up calls in the first place. So once a person answers a wake-up call, then they go through a transformation chapter, and those are chapters in our lives where we're doing deep inner work. And I have found that there are 7 key focus areas that people go through intuitively if they're successful in healing, that I educate consumers about, so that they can identify which of those 7 areas they are focused on in their current transformation cycle, so that they know exactly what kind of resources to look for. Because sometimes, frankly, as you know, the best intervention is not necessarily a psychotherapeutic intervention.
So another 7 points.
Right. So the first is the kind of the linchpin, which is the surrender piece, the self-responsibility, the piece that says, okay, I've been bludgeoned into surrender. I know I have a piece of healing to do, and my best thinking has helped me get into this mess. So my best thinking is not going to be what helps me get out of this mess. I have to open up. I'm willing to open up. I'm committed to opening up to being teachable. Right? So that's the first, is that kind of teachability, self-responsibility, spiritual humility. The second is foundational well-being or self-care, where when a person is in a state of turmoil in their lives, where all kinds of externals are stressful for them, relationships, or their living situation, or their work situation, or whatever, or their health. They're not getting enough sleep. They're not eating well. They don't have the internal resources that are necessary to be able to do the deeper work of healing. So self-care, elevating one's foundational well-being is a necessary prerequisite for being able to sustainably do the deeper inner work. A lot of what people do is they go straight to the deeper inner work, and they don't have the support system in their lives to be able to support them in moving forward. And then they wonder why they've come to gridlock inside themselves, or they're shutting down. The third is elevating a person's capacity for discernment. And what I mean by discernment is the ability to recognize sensations that we're having in our body and inquire about those sensations, so that we learn what our internal input is on a particular issue. Higher input, the ability to discern between when my fear is telling me what to do, and I'm calling it intuition mistakenly, and when it's my intuition or higher guidance that's giving me input. And the third aspect of discernment is discernment with others, because there are some people who are, as you know, in the relationship literature, what's called impervious to input. They won't take input from anybody. And there are other people who are at the other extreme, where they're indiscriminate sponges, and they'll take anything anyone says on board and try to pretend like it's their own truth. So there's higher discernment, internal discernment, and external discernment. When that's elevated, then we really can do the harvesting work, which is the fourth skill, which is the ability to do the level of internal healing and clean out that we need to do in order to get to a place where the undigested life experiences we've had, the unexpected, undesired, and even unacceptable life experiences we've had, have been converted into sacred spiritual gifts that actually elevate our authenticity and our capacity to love and collaborate with each other and our ability to be a positive influence in the world. So harvesting is the fourth skill set. The fifth is stepping into healthy personal power, so that we're able to really embody more of what we're really here to do, because we're now freer from the baggage that's been holding us back. The sixth is elevating our capacity to synergize or collaborate with others, because most people have only been taught how to either coerce, control others, or give in to other people controlling them, or to compromise, which is the best outcome. With compromise is all parties walk away from the negotiating table feeling equally ripped off. And so stepping into synergy happens when we're whole and complete as human beings, which is the authenticity or the personal power piece. Then we step into elevating our capacity for collaboration and synergy. And the final seventh skill is about stepping into our capacity for stewardship, so that we're able to express that part of our core drive that has to do with the desire to be a positive influence in the world in whatever particular way we're particularly called to be, with whatever groups we're called to be that influence inside of.
That's a lot. But that's right. But that's a really good map, right? So the idea is that if you're going to be on a journey, you want a good map. And of course, any really good map is going to show you both where you are accurately, which most people don't really understand yet. So those initial assessments and in my personal resources and my willingness to either just get rid of the symptom or actually do the work, and a map to show me where I might go, how I can get there step by step. And so the thing I like about speaking to someone like you who's giving an overview is that I'm hearing the words that I would use as a therapist being presented in a more organized or an organizational roadmap way as I'm listening to you speak, because it's the very thing we do often as therapists without realizing we're doing it. Like you said, these 6 principles, I remember probably back in '95, I ran across Bruce Ecker and Laurel Hulley, and their work was just so powerful, because all they did was go and analyze in those sessions where people had deep transformations, what the heck was happening? And they got permission to do the transcripts and the videos and the audios. And then they really put their genius minds to work looking at the patterns, and they discovered the kind of thing you're laying out, right? And these days that work is called coherence therapy. Yes. And coherence therapy, of course, is this umbrella term or foundational term within which you can use any of these tools, like the energy psychology or any other good psychotherapeutic tool. So that's fabulous. And to understand that you're training other therapists to think this way and be able to language or talk about how they're doing what they're doing, and then maybe hopefully spread that out to others, that's very exciting.
It's very exciting, because it's really about empowering therapists to do on purpose what they've been doing intuitively but haven't understood fully enough to be able to harness it. And it came out of my study of what I call natural developers intuitively do, that the rest of us deliberate self-developers might want to do on purpose, which was in turn an outgrowth of what I did for my doctoral dissertation back in the Middle Ages, well, back in the late 70s, early 80s, where I was looking at what were the client contributions to successful therapy rather than the therapist's contributions or the treatment method's contributions. And that's really what started me off on that journey. But what I was noticing in my psychotherapy years was that there were certain, I'm sure you've experienced this too, there were certain clients that would come to us that have come from absolutely horrendous backgrounds, way on the extreme end of dysfunctionality, and yet they have somehow intuitively become transformed to really lift themselves out of those horrendous backgrounds, whereas certain people who come from very garden variety backgrounds don't transform to save their lives. And so I got very interested in what are these intuitive, natural self-developers doing intuitively that people like me who are more of a deliberate self-developer might want to do on purpose. That's where this came from for me. And it is aligned with coherence therapy. I was doing this before that work came out.
Yeah, it's, well, and coherence therapy isn't the only one. And of course, when you look at how emotional freedom technique developed, it developed after a lot of people were doing a lot more structured energy work with knowledge of the acupuncture meridian systems. You mentioned Dr. Scott Walker, and I'm trained in that technique. It's one of the more powerful techniques I know to use with somebody one-on-one. Yeah. And just about the same time that that was happening, at least three other, when Dr. Scott Walker was doing his neuroemotional technique, at least three other systems that were kind of whole health systems, looking at nutrition and energy work and toxicity, they were developing in different places like, you know, the United Kingdom and Central Southern America. And so anyway,
yeah.
I've always been drawn to those things that when someone teaches it, all kinds of people can pick it up and use it. Yes. I've had many trainings over the past 46 and a half years where I saw phenomenally gifted, you know, genius creative people on stage or in therapy rooms do tremendous work with people.
Yeah.
And then not be able to replicate it and not be able to teach it to others. Or they talk about teaching it, and I would take the training, and I know other intelligent people take the training, and we just couldn't get anywhere near the results.
I get it. I was there too.
Yeah. So that's what I like about, you know, the structure you're providing, and what I've been drawn to is, and that's, you know, the Journey's Dream is kind of like the stepchild of the Optimal Being program, which is one of those things that just about anybody can pick up and do. So it's doing a lot of what your 7 steps are, your 7 skills. So
yes, I didn't invent these. All I was functioning as a reporter. So I don't think of this as my creation or my invention. Part of my background is in journalism. I just set out to do my best to report what I was observing.
So what's an area of your work that I haven't even asked you about yet?
Oh my goodness. Well, you know, I am one of those people who loves variety, and my career has always had a lot of variety. So for example, one of the hats that I wear today is I'm a what's called an M&A success psychologist, merger and acquisitions. So in the business world, when a business is getting prepared to be sold, or when a business is acquired and then the transition to the new owner needs to be facilitated, I work with businesses from the psychological end of business success, in helping businesses develop from psychological dimensions and helping to facilitate effective sales of and acquisitions of businesses. So that's another hat that I wear. I work with executives and leaders to help them step into the psychological skills that they would be wise to develop in order to be more successful as leaders. I work with a program that's actually developing a new comprehensive integrated infrastructure for building psychologically and ecologically healthy cities. So there are a number of different hats that I wear in the organizational development and leader development realms these days.
So specifically as it comes to training therapists, is there, and this is kind of cycling back to one of the questions I asked before, and you answered it in a general way about if I'm going to coach somebody about how to find a therapist that's a good fit for them, you want the expertise and the chemistry, right? You want to have, what I've been telling people for years is they need two things at a bare minimum for therapy to work: someone that knows what he or she is doing and someone with whom they're comfortable. If either of those two things are missing, don't waste your time and money, because you can have the very best therapist in the world, but if you don't feel comfortable with her, you won't go to her long enough that she can help you or tell her the things she needs to know to help you.
Perfectly named.
And
yeah.
and your best friend in the world, you're up till 3 and 4 in the morning, several nights a week, talking about everything that's ever bothered you. That's good, lovely, sometimes very helpful, but that's not therapy. That person doesn't have the professional distance and the professional training to do for you what a therapy can.
Yeah.
So if there's a way for you to say, if somebody came to you on the street, or the friend, a family friend said, what keywords or what approaches should I be looking for, or screen out as not what I want if I'm troubled with depression or anxiety or mood swings, these kinds of things that are the most common referrals we get? Where would you start with keywords or search items? Or
Right. Well, before the search items, the categories that I encourage people to contemplate and get clear about in terms of what they're wanting are these. Are they at a point in their journey where what they're looking for, the intervention or the assistance or the resource they're looking for, is about giving them hope, inspiration, and motivation? If so, that's, there's a whole motivational and inspirational community out there for those kinds of things. Or are they looking for what I call an altered state experience, meaning that there are certain workshops that exist that help people tap into an expanded state of awareness, or an expanded state of themselves that they don't know is there, or they hope is there, but they haven't experienced it, or they need to connect with that expanded version of themselves in order to have enough faith to take a deeper healing journey. So those altered state experiences are kind of like, and I'm not talking about drugs here, I'm talking about a lot of the human potential movement workshops are all giving people an expanded awareness or an expanded experience, so they have a taste of who they could step into being. But after the end of that kind of experience, then they have to be willing to do the work in order to live there all the time. So are they looking for that experience? Are they looking for a baggage removal experience where they're actually getting in there and clearing away the stuff that stands between them and who they really want to be being in the world? That's more of a psychotherapy experience. Are they looking for a more advanced psychotherapy experience because they've done truly a lot of effective clean out work, but they're not in full resonance with embodying the desired state that they want to be in the world from? So are they looking for elevating habits and skills for embodiment? Or are they looking for a resource that helps them translate new skills for thriving instead of surviving into automatic daily habits? Are they looking for an accountability mentor? Are they looking for for a way to make sure that those skills that they're learning become day-to-day habits. So I assess which of those types of experiences are right matched for where they are in order to know what type of resource to recommend to them.
So do you have a set of questions? Do you do that in an interview form? Is that a tool you have to make that assessment?
Well, when I'm having a conversation with someone, this is material that I developed back in the 1990s. It fully came together, and it's refined itself since then. So I can do this fairly quickly when I'm talking one-on-one with someone. But what I have also developed is a self-help training program that equips people to become effective consumers on their own behalfs of self-development resources that are right matched to whatever phase in their journey they're in and whatever resource category they're going to most benefit from in a given point in time, like the categories I just reviewed with you. So
you have a self-help development resource.
Yes, I do.
And that's on drgruder.com?
It's on drgruder.com. It's if you go to the Academy, drgruder.com, drgruder.com/academy, you'll go to a page that has all of my online programs. And the one that I'm referring to is called the Integrity Guide to Having It All.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I am thrilled that you would grace us with this time. I know we're just about out of time. I have been given the 5-minute nod that they're going to cut off my internet today for some repairs. So Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And I will look forward to following your work, and maybe in about 6 months or a year, reach out to you again, see if you're willing to do another interview on a specific topic that's a little bit more close to your heart.
Sounds great, and thank you for all of the work that you're doing with optimal being and the
Journey's Dream.
Dream. And it's really important work that's being done, and it's a great nonprofit, and thank you for being part of that.
You're entirely welcome and deserving. Thank you so much. Dr. David Gruder is a clinical and organizational development psychologist whose parents went to Woodstock when he was 15 years old. His passion is equipping leaders and influencers with spiritual, inner and outer skills for repairing and elevating the world in whatever ways each of us is called to do. He's been named America's Integrity Expert by Radio TV Interview Report, and he is a 12-time award-winning TEDx speaker. He provides keynotes, training programs, consulting, and media interviews worldwide on ways to integrate self-development, business success, and societal well-being. He has co-authored, authored, or been featured in 24 books and has given multiple hundreds of media interviews, including having been featured 24 times in Forbes Incorporated, Entrepreneur, and Nonprofit Performance magazines. In his quest to elevate mental health individuals, leaders, and society, David wears many hats, including President of Integrity Culture Systems, Psychological Business Strategist, and Mergers and Acquisitions Psychologist for Blue Sky Business Resources, and Elevate Summits, Wayfinder for Sinner Vision Leadership Foundation, Legacy Faculty with CEO Space International, Senior Trainer for the Association of Comprehensive Energy Psychology, which he co-founded and served as its first president, and Certified Ritual Elder with the Mankind Project. As exhausting as all this might sound, David maintains his own mental health by making sure he has plenty of alone time as well as playtime with his wife and loved ones. His main website is drgruder.com, and his online course portal is gruderacademy.com.
You've been listening to the On Your Mind podcast, offered by Journey's Dream, where we support people through mental health challenges to a place of true and lasting well-being. If you love our show, We invite you to visit onyourmindpodcast.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our helpful resources. Thank you for listening.